Part 30. Online game Dungeon Master. Author, Bulletin Lao Bulletin Si Bulletin Me. Chapter 291. Shen Xian's lightning-fast action stunned a geotechnical servant in front of him who had never seen the world. It was too terrible. Even the Bishop Ged they respected could be so miserable. At that moment, their faith showed signs of collapse. What they didn't know was that it was the unique ability of the evil unit to seduce the other party. They were only worried about whether they would die. When their faith was shaken, their shields full of holy power cracked, and Shen Xian took the opportunity to hit the wall with a sweep. Fulei was busy controlling the cage to prevent anyone from escaping. Seeing that the battle was decided, a beam of hot light shot out from her fingertips, and the numbers of 6,000 and 7,000 jumped out one by one, ending the lives of several geotechnical servants who fell to the ground. In less than 5 seconds, Bishop Ged was the only one left in the huge room, and he was not far from death. Ged couldn't imagine that the two of them could eliminate all his servants in just 15 seconds. Even the Earth Guards of the Mother Temple were not so powerful, and there was no time to react. His face was covered with dust, unwillingness, and resentment. Shen Xian didn't care, stared at him for the last time, and decided to kill him. Fulei came over, and in an instant, Ged suddenly released the magic stored in the bishop's crown on his head and jumped up. His health was restored from the previous 20% to 50% in an instant, replenishing more than 100,000 health points. He raised his hands, and a golden shield appeared in front of his chest, blocking the opposite side's sudden sunset gun. His body kept retreating in front of the strong power of the sunset gun, and blood flowed from the corners of his mouth. The level 7 magic earth shield did not block all damage as imagined. The level 7 earth shield absorbs 17,000 points of physical damage. It is the best spell to protect ground units from being torn apart by defense facilities during wartime, but it has a disadvantage: it can only protect the front. Seeing that Ged was still fighting to the death, a teleportation appeared behind him, and almost recited a short spell at close range, and then the raging flames burned his holy robes, and 3,000 and 4,000 damage began to float out continuously. Resistance is useless, Shen Xian said. Ged's health value returned to below 100,000. The earth shield was full of cracks and was about to fail to block the attack. He turned around and stabbed again. Ged's body could no longer withstand the terrifying pressure of the sunset spear. It was pierced through the whole body, and it collided with the high wall behind it with a bang, and was buried under the ruins. No breath. The system prompts to gain experience. The two people who were indifferent to life and death skillfully searched for books in the library, waved their hands to push down the neat bookshelves, glanced, took out a few excellent and rare books, and then fled in a hurry. It would be no problem to say that they massacred all the people in the Earth Temple, but the nature of the incident was completely different. If the demon who acted recklessly might do so, for Shen Xian, not massacring was the result he wanted. Back to the hotel. Last was still waiting. Seeing that they returned so quickly, he thought they were going to scout intelligence. What? Bishop Ged is dead, Last shouted in disbelief. That's the truth. Okay, according to what I said before, you should hand over the things. Oh. Rast wondered how the two were so powerful. Fortunately, he didn't anger them at the beginning, otherwise even the family would not be left now. He thought and took the two to his manor. He felt that even Bishop Ged could be killed without any care. It must be a powerful force. From the other party's tone, it seemed that they wanted to use him as a training object. Doesn't it mean that one day he, Rast, can climb over the heads of those big men? He was thinking about it, and they returned to the mansion in a blink of an eye. There are also benefits to the decline of the family. No one will interfere with what Rast wants to do. When he took out the werewolf taming technology, Shen Xian had already sensed that his faith had improved a little compared to before. Anyone who dedicates everything can be blessed by the gods. Rast now has reached the point of blind worship of the illusory god, so his soul can be said to be completely corrupted. Shen Xian can kill him as long as he wants to kill him. However, he still has value. His piety makes Shen Xian full of confidence in the action in the other plane. He took a quick look at the werewolf taming technology. This is a rare technical book with extremely high strategic value. First, werewolf can be raised on a large scale and can be popularized like horses. Second, groups of werewolf are fierce and difficult to stop. Just investigate the orc cavalry in the Broken Continent and you will find that more than half of them use werewolf. Whether it is forest wolf, sand wolf, grass wolf, ice wolf, or magic wolf, all are recorded. The value of werewolf taming technology is indeed not small. It is not very useful for Dusk City, which has formed a cavalry profession with horses and flying dragons. It can be sold for millions. Moreover, this is only the first step of his strategy for the other plane. The next step is to support Rast to take the position. If he can satisfy him, he can easily get countless believers. That is truly a priceless treasure. You should understand what you are going to do. I heard that the next successor to the bishop should be Priest Wesker. Do you want to visit him? Shen Xian said to him meaningfully. The master in front of him wanted him to protest to Wesker, telling him that Bishop Ged died because of him, and asking him not to mess with him. Rast understood. He did understand what Shen Xian meant. After a while, he thought that as long as he maintained harmony with Bishop Wesker, he would soon become a city lord. As a regional bishop, Wesker's future status was more than one level higher than his. With his recommendation, his future was naturally limitless. Yes, I understand, he said excitedly, and decided to please him. He knew that Priest Wesker had the same bad hobbies as him. As long as he sent him a few little girls, he might be able to ask him for help. If he refused, at worst, he would ask the adults in front of him to kill him. He made up his mind and made a choice in his heart. It seemed that only believing in the Sunset God cult could make him gain status and power. However, the two people in front of him were not easy to serve, and he didn't know what benefits he could give them. Perhaps, he should send him a few beautiful little girls like Wesker? He thought carefully. Online game DungeonMaster. Author, Bulletin Lao Bulletin Si Bulletin Me. Chapter 292. Shen Xian and Fulei stayed in the other plane for a few days, hoping to find more business opportunities. It would be a waste to just use this place as a training base for believers. What he wanted was to seek some benefits that could be seen immediately. He ordered Rast to find information about the Mage Tower in the surrounding areas. As Fulei became more familiar with this place, she was more and more certain that the familiar aura came from the Mage Tower and would help their actions in the other plane. After a few days, or just a few hours, the unfortunate death of Bishop Ged was announced to the public, and the selection of the new bishop began. Since the Earth God Church would not directly send bishops from the Great Temple, the high-minded bishops looked down on this remote place, and the selection would be held locally. The most likely person to be elected was Pastor West. Rast, who was hinted by Shen Xian, hurriedly contacted secretly, coerced and lured. West was also a person who feared death. After knowing what was going on, he did not want to suffer an unprovoked disaster. It didn't matter if the faith of the regional bishop was cracked. Even if he condoned the existence of evil, his position was still stable. February 18, Last's Manor. Sir, this is the magic beast taming technology that I collected from the surrounding areas. There are a total of 13 ordinary level books, 3 excellent level books, and 1 rare level book. Last said timidly, handing over a dozen thick books, many of which were covered in dust and old. Several technical books cost him a lot of gold. Fortunately, as a lord with privileges, he can directly use violent means to rob, and some of the books were looted from players. He seemed to have figured out Shen Xian's needs technical books. The value of technical books is very high. Selling them to the main material plane can exchange for a lot of money, and this happens to be the advantage of the alien plane, which can be exported on a large scale. Last is not worried about the consequences of technology export. Even the technical books inherited by his family have been given away by him. As long as he is appreciated by the Lord in front of him, what does it matter? Shen Xian felt very satisfied. Compared with the current capital reserves of Dusk City, a dozen technical books were nothing. After all, it was a bargain. Who would let it go? They were looking for a suitable business project in the alien plane, which required a lot of time to collect. Of course, some could be found online, but there were not many game masters in the alien plane, so the information obtained was relatively limited. Listed here, the characteristics of the alien plane are as follows. In terms of technology, domestication technology is definitely dominant, and the commercial value is judged to be medium, because not everyone has monsters around their territory, and the distribution of different domestication technologies is also related to the terrain. Even if Shen Xian wants to collect and sell in batches, the biggest problem is how to sell the technology to those who need it most. The production and living part has special food preservation technology, which extends the storage period of food by 100%, which is very helpful for defensive battles. Another is the combined mining technology derived from the domestication of monsters, which uses the different characteristics of several common monsters to improve the efficiency of mining ore and cutting wood. The above-mentioned technologies are several technologies that are widely circulated, unique and useful in the alien plane. As for goods, Shen Xian focused on finding expensive goods in the other planes to see if they can be produced in the main material plane. The consumption of magic crystals in the other planes is relatively large, but the value of trading as goods is also judged to be medium. After deducting the loss during the plane travel, the profit is roughly around 50%, which is not very high. Unless Shen Xian controls a pure elemental plane, perhaps the price of magic crystals can be lowered to an unimaginable level. Of course, there is an alternative method, using the flame crystals of the fire elemental plane, which is not as widely used as magic crystals. The second is the material business. Due to the development of Warcraft domestication technology, Warcraft can appear in batches. Expensive materials that are rarely seen at ordinary times can be mass-produced, which lowers the price and also has the possibility of trading. At the same time, materials are easier to carry than living Warcraft. High-end ones, such as the scales of the nine-headed sea snake and the blood of the ancient behemoth, can be sold for tens of thousands of yuan. The last type is art, such as painting, music, sculpture, and literature. Compared with the main material plane, it is more developed. Even the elves of the Phoenix Council may not have the rich culture of the other plane. It is just that it is relatively difficult to trade art as a commodity. You can sell paintings, music scores, portraits, and novels. The above are the products of art, but Shen Xian feels that there is no high profit without Warcraft materials. He has been preparing for the past few days and ordered Last to investigate the data he needs. After a day in reality, West's appointment as bishop came down, and the lords of dozens of towns and cities around went to the Earth Temple to congratulate West on his promotion. Last's public relations are good. When West took over, the nearly 50-year-old bishop hinted at his attention to him. Perhaps most of them could not hear it, but a few people realized that in a few days, Last could be promoted to city lord, so they were busy making friends with him, hoping not to fall behind others in the future. On the second night, Last put the goods quotation and magic tower information in the surrounding areas that Shen Xian requested in front of him. Shen Xian had to get the regional quotation and work with several experts in Dusk City to plan and try to establish several relatively stable cargo routes so as not to be suppressed by business rivals. As for the message from the Mage Tower, he opened it and read it directly. There are two famous Mage Towers in the Principality of Larn. Each Mage Tower has a third-turn Great Mage who maintains the local order. There are 138 smaller mage towers in total. Most of them are attached to local cities and provide necessary services to the cities. The rest are built in the wild and belong to free forces. Whether it is the force they want to find needs to be judged by Frey. Frey browsed the information. The two visited the two largest mage towers respectively in the night, but did not find the answer they wanted. It seems that the person they want to find is not in the Principality of Larn, but in other countries on the continent. They were a little disappointed and could only wait quietly. Another day passed, and the appointment letter from the capital of the Principality of Larn finally arrived. In view of the old age of the Lord of Pregna City, Rast is now appointed as the new Lord of the city to manage 524 surrounding territories. The promotion of players in the surface world is achieved through the above methods, involving complex political struggles, and there is no direct determination of victory or defeat by strength in the underground world. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online game Dungeon Master. Author, Bulletin Lau Bulletin Si Bulletin Me. Chapter 293. Shen Xian brought the prices of several materials provided by Last to Dusk Town. In the middle of the night, 4 or 5 players hurried to discuss and solve the problem in the conference hall. It is an indisputable fact that Dusk Town has a developed manufacturing industry. However, it is important to understand that the higher the level of the items, the more complicated the manufacturing process. Taking equipment as an example, the first step is to collect raw ore from the mining area, obtain fur and bones from monsters, and obtain stems and leaves from plants. The second step is to smelt the raw ore into rough ingots, which are refined into pure ingots through special steps. The fur needs to be processed by salt immersion, sorted and cut into a fixed shape, and the stems are crushed and woven into cloth, or more advanced magic cloth. The third step is to sew and cast to complete the various parts of a complex equipment. The last step is to combine and form to complete a piece of equipment. After the combination, it needs to be beautified. One is to make the appearance beautiful, the second is to use special patterns to indicate the forces to which it belongs, and then to enchant and infuse power to make the attributes of the equipment more powerful. Rare equipment often includes 6 or 7 procedures, and epic equipment is more complicated, even more than a dozen. Many materials must be processed in special places, so the acquired Warcraft materials must first be distributed to various territories for processing and then gathered in Dusk City. This contains profits. Who doesn't want to get the privilege of processing Warcraft materials? Even if it is only tens of thousands of gold, it must not be ignored for ordinary players. Several materials are separated. One is scales, which are mainly used to make heavy armor such as plate armor and mail armor. One is fur, which is mainly used for leather armor on archers and thieves. There is also blood, bones, eyeballs, and teeth of various Warcraft, which are materials needed for enchantment and alchemy. Of course, the semi-finished products after processing will eventually flow to Dusk Town and a few manufacturing towns. The division of labor between territories is clear, and these are the only things players can fight for. Therefore, several players quarreled and competed with each other for a few pieces of Hydra scales and a few drops of ancient behemoth blood every day. Even though it was 9 o'clock in the evening and it was time for players from several countries to go to bed, they were still very interested. Shen Xian posted the technical book on the trading platform. Although the black market in Dusk City was developing rapidly, it was not as convenient as the internet and could not let players around the world know about it. The characteristics of Warcraft taming technology made it necessary to sell it to the corresponding players to sell it at a high price. Otherwise, if a copy of dragon taming technology was sold to the devil in hell, wouldn't it be sold at a low price? In less than an hour, a player expressed his intention to buy. The price was not a problem. What needed to be discussed was how to transport it. Shen Xian sent a player from Kangdu Studio out, but he became a hands-off boss and ran to the other plane with Fule. The main task at the current stage is to complete the development of the elemental gate, but the first phase of the project was completed and stuck on a small problem, so Shen Xian had to develop on two fronts. The trade in the other plane is also a major issue, but the two people's transportation volume is limited. It is absolutely impossible to rely on technology alone for a long time, and the volume of material transactions cannot be increased. In fact, Shen Xian has already thought of a solution, to build a teleportation array. The two people usually carry 500 units of goods when walking in the other plane. After the teleportation array is built, the consumption of magic crystals to transport materials is no longer restricted, which is somewhat similar to the teleportation array to the Hell Fortress. The arrangement of the teleportation array is a huge project that can only be arranged by the fifth stage of the Mage Tower or the Grand Mage. Although the small teleportation array is only 10 meters in diameter, it basically requires 8-digit consumption to complete the arrangement. At present, he has not made preparations to recover the cost of building the teleportation array. Pregna City. The two completed the first transaction with Rast, and Shen Xian began to designate him to secretly develop believers. He now has more than a dozen quotas. As long as he quickly upgrades to level 90, the upper limit of his believers can be increased to several hundred. If the person who signs the contract is a strong person, the effect will certainly be good, but if not, the upgrade speed will slow down, which will affect the whole situation. The strongest of Shen Xian's followers is the Emerald Dragon Bilis, the guardian of the Wei's wetland. He is a non-intelligent creature and will not benefit from signing a contract. Or can he use his current level advantage to force several strong men to submit to him? I hope it will not cause public outrage, Shen Xian thought to himself. In the next 4 days, he frequently traveled between the two worlds and traded continuously. Finally, he could find the entrance to the passage to that world without the help of Frey. His level reached 87, and his level in the other plane was 129. After a week of pilot testing by the players below, the number of controlled territories in Dusk City increased by more than 10. Not wanting the surrounding forces to be alerted by the expansion, Shen Xian ordered the players below to keep a low profile. If they wanted to capture other people's territories, they had to do it in a private grudge. Although the number of territories did not increase much, the prosperity increased by 3 points, and the problem of territory type could not be tested at all, unless it was to study the information of other territories. Therefore, through the test, the players felt that the reason why prosperity could not be improved was the small number of territories. In the next week, Shen Xian called on players to explore new territories. After letting go, the efficiency was improved. In 2 days, Dusk City had 20 more controlled territories. Prosperity increased to 37. At this moment, the construction projects of the 3 winning players have been completed, and the 5th stage of the Mage Tower in the remaining territories is still under intense construction. The 5th stage of the Mage Tower, the Grand Mage Tower, is the highest honor that a mage dreams of. In the main material plane, there are less than 2,000 Grand Mage Towers that have reached the 5th stage. A mage who owns a Grand Mage Tower is equivalent to owning an army, which is the embodiment of the power of the Mage Tower. Naturally, its upgrade time is also very long, requiring 120 hours. For Dusk City, the plan to upgrade the city center is almost ready, only the east wind is missing. Population, satisfaction, prosperity, civilization, miracles, all the data required for upgrading have been reached or approached. As for the remaining resources, I believe that they can be satisfied through a few days of resource accumulation and temporary imports. And this time there is no Dark Elf invasion last time. The defense facilities of Dusk City are not afraid of any harassment, and there is no player force. Because Dusk City is currently in the core area of the entire territory, it cannot be captured all at once, so they only need to wait 150 hours. On March 3, Dusktown was upgraded to a city, becoming the fourth player territory in the main material plane to upgrade to a city center. The population of the entire territory quickly grew to 250,000 in the following weeks, and the army approached 30,000. A plan to plunder resources from the other plane and seize believers had just begun. Online game Dungeon Master. Author, Bulletin Lao Bulletin Si Bulletin Me. Chapter 294. The second backup method is to build a teleportation array with the resources of the other plane. Since the main material plane can open a space channel to the other plane, why can't the other plane open a space channel to the main material plane? The disadvantages of the second backup method are obvious. It is much more difficult to gather the personnel and materials needed for construction in the other plane than in the main material plane. It is not enough to rely on Rast alone. More talents need to be controlled to complete this arduous task. The other plane. Adjacent to the Principality of Larn is the Kingdom of Cook, a medium-sized country with a population of tens of millions. Due to the rampant magic beasts, the amount of land occupied by humans is not much. Cook can be said to be one of the top powers on this continent. Droha on the border of the Kingdom of Cook is a fortress city built on a cliff. The entire city is located more than 1,000 meters above sea level. The terrain is dangerous and the city defense is strict. The purpose is to prevent the ferocious magic beasts from the Lafras jungle from invading the country. On a mountain in the east of Droha stands a 400-year-old mage tower. Shenxian and Fulei are now standing at the foot of the mage tower. At night, the wind on the mountain whistles. Several mage apprentices stand at both ends of the bridge exit leading to the mage tower, with the main entrance behind them. It is the annual day for the mage tower to select apprentices. The civilians and nobles of Droha all hope that their children can become mages, so from time to time, parents bring their children to the mage tower to be selected by the mages. "Sir, are you bringing your child to register as a mage apprentice?" several mage apprentices around asked respectfully when they saw the two. They may be weaker than their teachers, but they can see that the little girl in front of them has good magic potential. The little girl is Fulei. As the King of Flame, it is easy for her to deceive the mage apprentices in front of her who are only a dozen levels. Although she is a little reluctant to let her be a child, this is a simple way to enter the mage tower without alarming others. Who knows what kind of wizards there will be in the wizard tower of Droha? It is always better to be cautious. Moreover, Fulei found something familiar in this wizard tower, so she naturally cannot act rashly. Yes, Shenxian nodded. He disguised himself as a ruined noble. As for his weapons and armor, they were temporarily stored in Fulei's star ring. As long as the situation changes, they can be replaced immediately. After hearing this, several wizard apprentices hurriedly walked out and stretched out their hands and said, Please follow me. Remember the rules set by the wizard tower. Please don't walk around casually to avoid accidents. We will take you to see the mentor first and let the mentor decide where she belongs." The remaining apprentices made way for the passage, and the three of them then came to the interior of the wizard tower through a translucent door arranged by a defensive barrier. The central position of the interior is the spire, and the magic garden surrounds the spire. The apprentice who guided them was very nagging, so that Shenxian had a full understanding of the structure of the wizard tower. Fulei covered her mouth and laughed, thinking that the apprentice mage in front of her was talking too much nonsense, and actually told them many things about the mage tower that they shouldn't tell them. Perhaps he thought that Fulei's ability to become a mage apprentice would not change. Anyway, the two walked more than 100 meters inside and entered a high tower, and the mage mentor who was to receive them was inside. However, Shenxian did not give the mage apprentice the opportunity to take them to see the mentor. As long as they entered the mage tower, they would be safe. The defensive barrier could not be ignored even by level 130, but the interior was different. They could come and go freely based on their level. He quietly punched the mage apprentice on the head, knocked him out, and hit him. We have 30 minutes. I found that the breath came from the showroom in the west of the mage tower. Let's go there, Fulay said. Wait a minute, let me take off his clothes. Shen Xian was different from Fulay. He wore civilian clothes and needed to disguise himself, so he had to put on the clothes from the mage apprentice who had just been knocked unconscious, and then the two slowly walked towards the west. Along the high rocks, they walked several sections of simple and steep mountain roads, and then passed several spires protruding from the mountainside, and the two arrived at their destination. Who are you? Why haven't I seen you before? The questioner was an old mage. There was no need to disguise here. Shen Xian reached out and grabbed him and pushed him into the room. The entire showroom was guarded by only him, a level 71 second turn scholar, so there would be no problem. Fulay shook her body and flew up. Elemental creatures don't like to walk, their bodies are half empty. Seeing this scene, the old mage was stunned. You, he wanted to speak, but he couldn't speak. Shen Xian felt that there was no need to ask the old mage, so he also knocked him out and searched around with Fulay. Unlike the warehouse, most of the equipment in the showroom was finished, and there were usually dangerous magic traps. After Fulay swept it, the traps were broken. There were two epic equipment in the small showroom. Unfortunately, before he knew the enemy and us, Shen Xian couldn't take it for himself even if he wanted to. Fulay reached out and took two epic equipment. One of them was an unidentified staff called the Song of Psychic, and the other was a yellow magic bead with magical power. Fulay recognized that the magic bead was called Spinter's mysterious magic bead. Spinter was Spencer's younger brother, and he was also famous for his alchemy talent in the era of Terredin. But, why did a treasure from the Terredin era that should have been lost appear here? This is the crux of the problem. Shen Xian stared at the magic bead and said. Let's ask him, I wonder if we can wake him up. Fulay was puzzled, as if she had thought of something, but she just needed confirmation. Use fire, my stun skill only lasts for a few minutes for low-level units, and he will recover soon. Fulay smiled, and a small fire burned from the old wizard's buttocks. The old wizard jumped up with a shiver, and hurriedly patted the flames on his body, while whispering, What do you want to do? Two thieves, aren't you afraid of the Tower Master? But when he found that the two had a nonchalant expression on their faces, he knew that the matter could not be resolved peacefully. Tell me, where did you get this magic bead? It was obtained by the Tower Master when he attended the mage meeting, I don't know the details. Hearing this, the two knew that the magic bead must have flowed out from the interior of the kingdom of Cook, and they pondered. Is the interior of the kingdom of Cook related to Terredin? Otherwise, how could things in the main material plane run to the other plane? 2 more chapters completed, please recommend. Online game Dungeon Master. Author, Bulletin Lao Bulletin Si Bulletin Me. Chapter 295. One fact is certain, that is, the Wizard Tower of Droha has little to do with the mysterious aura they are looking for, that is, the two epic items in front of them belong to them. The Song of Psychic Communication, a powerful staff used to control warcraft. Any beast with the ability to cast spells can be called a warcraft. A weapon that can communicate with creatures is naturally priceless. Song of Spiritual Communication, Epic, Attack Power 450, Wisdom 680, Spirit 300, Spirit Enhancement 30%, Casting Distance increased by 35%, Condition Level 48, Non-Evil Characteristics, Skill Spiritual Communication, Natural Call, Survival of the Fittest. Spiritual Communication, Passive, improve the favorability of non-intelligent creatures by 15. Natural Call, casting interval 14 hours, randomly summoning monsters within a range of 10 kilometers, the level does not exceed the level of the releaser, and the number does not exceed 6. Survival of the Fittest, gain a 50% increase in life recovery when in a safe area, and a 75% increase in mana recovery when in a dangerous area. When the two left, they took away several level 9 magic scrolls and several rare equipment, and finally walked out of the mage tower with a swagger. The level 93 strength of the tower owner could not threaten them. They could only blame their bad luck for meeting two people from another world who did things without any scruples. The two then walked along the banks of the Tutone River leading to the heartland of the Kingdom of Kook, with the goal of searching the Kingdom of Kook, finding the source of the familiar aura, and investigating the religious situation of the kingdom to see if it was suitable for the development of the sunset god cult. About half an hour later, they appeared in a large city called Castor in the southern province of Kook. There was also a magic tower in the city, which was famous for its hundreds of magical beasts. The magic tower of Castor was in the early stage of the 5th stage of the magic tower, and was more prosperous than the Droha they had seen before. Although the entire magic tower was not manned, there was a clear class division from the lowest level apprentices, mid-level spell assistants, researchers, to the highest level tower master and several wandering mages. There were more than 100 mages staying here, which was very rich. Even the apprentices wore excellent suits, and the precious items collected in the showroom over the past few hundred years were countless. However, the place was still invaded by the daring Shen Xian and Fulei, also because of the familiar smell inside, the relics from Teredin, but the local mages obviously got them not long ago, at most 3 years. The defense facilities of the Mage Tower in Castor did not adopt the layout of multiple defense barriers, but countless magic guards were deployed in the entire Mage Tower. It was built on a huge rock, which was suspended in the air with 6 black iron chains of several hundred meters long and several meters thick. There was only a spiral staircase near the ground leading to the bottom of the Mage Tower. Of course, any Mage Tower must have its loopholes. Even Teredin, who ruled the continents with magic, disappeared in the dust of history. How could the Mage Tower in Castor resist the prying of Shen Xian and Fulei? The current tower master is called Anthony. He was once the descendant of a magic family that has been passed down for hundreds of years. Anthony has a lot of insights into the magic of the dark faction compared to others. The more he understands darkness, the more he understands the omnipotence of darkness. Shen Xian carefully selected him as the object of investigation because he is most likely to fall. If he looks for a devout person, he will not only fail to achieve his goal but also expose himself, but Anthony in front of him at least has not. Anthony stood in the quiet meditation room, his body motionless like a statue, his mind was trying to touch the mysterious world, his heart, storm-like energy was surging everywhere. As long as he was close to him, he would feel an inexplicable suction, like a whirlpool in the vast ocean, pulling people into a strange space. He is undergoing a dream trial, and what he sees is no longer the real world of the past, but the truth stripped of the false appearance. He will experience a dream in a world of nothingness, and powerful beings from hell and the abyss will descend on his space with ideology to tempt him to fall. If he wants to complete the trial, he needs to overcome these hardships. Dream Trial is a way for the third turn Grand Mage to continue upgrading. After level 100, the experience required for upgrading is close to 10 digits. Mages are not missionaries, and can obtain a lot of extra experience with believers. Although staying in the Mage Tower can obtain millions of experience per hour, it is too different from the requirements for upgrading. Completing the Dream Trial can upgrade 10 levels, with an average success rate of 10%. Although countless young and promising mages are lost because of it, it can improve the level of mages in a short time. In the illusory world, Anthony stood on a small island. He was naked and carrying chains, stumbling step by step on the desolate and cracked land. There was no end to the road. There were countless eyes staring at him above the gloomy sky. As long as he hesitated, he would fall into an irreversible situation. At this time, Anthony happened to be at his weakest period. Shen Xian and Fulei happened to be the people closest to him. Shen Xian stood in front of Anthony holding a pair of strange boots. As long as he got close to him, he could enter his world in a special form. The boots in his hand were found in the treasure showroom. They were called Eternal Footprints. They were red soft boots made of phoenix feathers. They could give the wearer the opportunity to resurrect on the spot and replenish life magic once every 720 hours. They were also a relic of Teredin. Staring at the human figure of Shen Xian, the dense black aura behind him, Anthony's cracked lips moved a little, not understanding who the other party was and why he could appear in front of him in a clear form. Of course, he didn't know that the guard he ordered had been dealt with. He had a strange feeling in his heart, thinking that the human in front of him was more terrifying than the devil in hell. He then noticed the eternal footprints in Shen Xian's hand, which he obtained from the Dawn shelter in Calais, and he had some doubts in his heart. With his level 103 strength, he certainly couldn't threaten Shen Xian in battle, so when Shen Xian asked about the origin of the boots, Anthony immediately answered. You said that the eternal footprints came from the Dawn shelter in Calais, the second largest city in the kingdom of Cook. Without Fulay around, Shen Xian had no way to speculate. He pondered in his heart and decided to wait until he went out to seek the truth, and then began the next step of work, temptation. As long as Anthony became a believer, the daily experience share could be as high as hundreds of thousands, which is millions a day in reality. In this way, he can maintain the speed of 1 level per week before reaching level 100. But when he wanted to take action, countless screams and wails sounded in his ears, accompanied by the threats of countless powerful beings, the demon lords from the abyss, the devil kings of hell. Countless people who hated him and envied his existence were unwilling to see his success and admit their failure. We can give you everything. Get out, mortal, this is not what you should do. The ethereal voice echoed in his ears, causing tens of thousands of injuries to Shen Xian. The armor could not protect him, and scars appeared on his body, and then healed quickly. For the threats from the distant world, Shen Xian's only advantage is that he will not be discovered by the evil from the abyss and hell. He is too small and nameless, and no one knows his exact identity. And his level in this world has reached the point where he ignores the attacks of the devil. Tens of thousands of injuries seem high, but they are not continuous. If you want to cross the space barrier and attack indiscriminately, you must be the highest person in the hell and abyss world. Submit to me, or I will kill you. Shen Xian used his body to block the attacks from the devil and demons. He would not really kill Anthony, because the mysterious death of a master of a magic tower was the same as killing Bishop Ged, and even more serious. Ged was unknown, while Anthony had been famous for a long time. Killing him would definitely make the surrounding areas uneasy and make his actions develop in a bad direction. Anthony looked at his appearance and knew that he was right. In this world, his strength, and the opponent's strength could not be imagined by common sense. He was only level 78 now, and the opponent was level 113. In other words, he wanted to kill himself and it was not a joke. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online game Dungeon Master. Author, Buledin Lao Buledin Si Buledin Me. Chapter 296. Shen Xian's question was concise and powerful, and Anthony had to listen carefully. However, how could he, who had reached level 103, easily surrender? Becoming a servant of the devil was a shame for him. Even if his life was threatened, he did not want to lose his dignity as a mage in order to survive. At this time, his naked upper body was being blown by the biting cold wind, enduring endless pain. It was an inhuman requirement to keep calm in the face of pain. He gritted his teeth and insisted, wanting to rely on his own thoughts to get the answer. Whether to choose life or death, he was confused. Slowly, his vision began to blur, and the laughter above his head became more and more frequent, as if laughing at his incompetence. Shen Xian stared at Anthony quietly. This was the first time he faced such a special situation. It was not optimistic. The threat of death was not enough to stimulate him and make him obey himself. He felt it necessary to take decisive measures at any time. Killing him to avoid revealing his identity, even if it caused chaos in the surrounding world, was better than being hunted by countless people. This is a choice. He hesitated, holding a long sword in his hand, ready to attack at any time. He continued to bewitch Anthony, taking advantage of his confusion and making him sign the contract when he was not in a clear mind. Another advantage he had was that he could contact Anthony, unlike the evil from hell and the abyss, which could only be shown in the form of a weak plane incarnation. Time passed by, and Fulay outside was also waiting nervously, fearing that something unexpected would happen. As long as Shen Xian appeared and issued an order to kill him, Anthony would be killed by Fulay without any resistance. However, Anthony did not know that there were people outside, but just wanted to fight and fight his fate. If there was no Shen Xian, perhaps his dream trial would be successful, and his will and spirit would reach perfection, but he met Shen Xian, and he had only two choices, to believe in him or die. "Don't challenge my patience," Shen Xian, who was impatient, shouted in a low voice. The pressure from above was also very heavy. He could not stand unaffected by his strength of more than 100 levels in the dream world, which showed that the evil above was not easy to mess with. Finally, Anthony made a decision. He didn't know that Shen Xian was by his side. He knew that his death would bring great trouble to Shen Xian, and he would definitely not make such a choice. He said slowly, "I promise you." Shen Xian's tense nerves relaxed at that moment. Anthony agreed. This was such a gratifying thing. Although people's hearts are hard to guess, success is what he has always hoped for. "Reject him, stupid guy," the roar above the head resounded throughout the space, and was extremely dissatisfied with Anthony's choice. You know, they were the first to come, and they were actually robbed of their sight by an evil that could not be called evil. How could they not be angry? The huge waves around them were rolling and could swallow the two tiny figures at any time. The weak Anthony looked at the sky, did not listen to their advice, and chose to sign the contract. "This is your own choice." There were several more loud noises. Under the influence of those distant forces, the sky turned completely black. The rolling sea of clouds seemed to roar with thunder and lightning, like the sound of nightmares. Layers of space began to distort, becoming different from the real world and closer to the real dream. However, it was far from enough to threaten Shen Xian. Shen Xian stood there with a sneer. Anthony resolutely signed his name. Although he might never reach the level of demigods due to the failure of the dream trial, he might gain other types of power as compensation through the powerful existence he believed in. A circular mark with black patterns appeared on his forehead and then disappeared. After Shen Xian gained Anthony's belief, he immediately left his world and returned to reality, giving the anxiously waiting Fulay a successful gesture. Anthony also returned to reality soon after. If he chose to accept the temptation, he could not continue the trial. When he found that the person who had just signed the contract was standing in front of him, and his strength was not even comparable to that of a demigod, he knew that he might have been deceived. However, he still squeezed out a few smiles, because there was no possibility of regret after the contract was signed, unless his level was higher than Shen Xian. After signing the contract, Shen Xian could check Anthony's attributes. The upgrade speed of a level 103 mage is about 10 days in the real world, 250 hours, 4 million experience points per hour, and 40,000 each time. It is not as much as hundreds of thousands as imagined, but it has increased by at least 10% compared to the past. If Miss Xiao, Frey, Luna, and others can be accepted as believers, they can also be upgraded, but the actual operation is not so easy, because many people in the territory have received relevant tasks from various forces. Once they change their camps, they will lose many benefits and easily attract the attention of surrounding forces. Therefore, there are not many people in the territory who can choose to become believers, and they can only rely on external forces. The two began to interrogate Anthony, wanting to know the origin of the Dawn Shelter. According to Anthony, the Dawn Shelter was a mage tower that suddenly rose 5 years ago. The specific details are not clear, but the powerful power it possesses is enough to shock people, and it has become the leader of the surrounding mage world. Could it be that the Dawn Shelter is related to him? Frey said to herself. Are you referring to Phillips? When Shen Xian mentioned the number 5 years ago, he suddenly thought of something. 5 years seemed to be very close to the time of that mission. Yes. Frey answered in a low voice, it should be related to Phillips. As one of the managers of the Elemental Gate, Phillips used to be the chief Twilight Mage of the Dawn cult who stood at the forefront of the resistance against Teredin. Later, he was killed by the great mages of Teredin and turned into a magical creature. Then he began to change slowly and embarked on the road of fighting against the gods. I didn't expect him to appear here. No wonder the exploration of the crisis-ridden alternate dimension became so easy. After the two guessed the truth of the matter, they decided to go to the Dawn Shelter in Calais to see. No matter how Phillips is now, I believe it will be helpful for Huang Hunchen's strategy in the alternate dimension. The two left the Mage Tower of Castor and walked towards Calais. Anthony came back to his senses after a long time, showing a puzzled look. He didn't understand what they just asked, but he soon received news that the treasure showroom was looted. In addition to the eternal footprints, there was also an epic equipment and more than a dozen rare equipment stolen. There are probably only 2 ways to describe his mood now: regret. Calais is a large city with a population of 700,000. It is at the peak of the 5th stage of the territory. In addition, it controls the economic artery of the Kingdom of Cook. It is prosperous and lively everywhere. In the center of the city is a statue of the first king of the Cook Empire, which is almost only a little lower than the goddess of the earth, showing the people's reverence for the king. A few hundred meters south along the wide street, you can see a spectacular wizard tower. The style is completely different from the general style of the other plane. There is the Dawn Sanctuary, the former Elemental Gate. Online game Dungeon Master. Author, Bulletin Lao Bulletin Si Bulletin Me. Chapter 297. The Dawn Shelter is just a code name. Although most of the Mage Tower has been repaired and disguised, its core is still the part that was taken away when they left. The interior of the Elemental Gate is centered on the Elemental Hall, with several suspended bridges and several short-distance teleportation arrays as windows, radiating to all directions. The Great Library represents knowledge, the meditation room for trials, the astrology tower looking up at the sky, the storm center for controlling the weather, and the mirror of time and space that connects to other worlds. Because the outer buildings and several magic fortresses connecting the outer and inner parts were not taken away, the entire Mage Tower did not seem as spectacular as before. Several young monsters were playing in the sky courtyard of the Mage Tower. They were not big, but you would still be shocked when you see them with your own eyes. A fiery red 110 level bird-shaped monster, dragging its tail feathers woven with flames, chased a 126 level aquatic monster that looked like a turtle several meters in size below. The fiery red one is actually a phoenix. It is said that the feathers of the phoenix are one of the few items that can allow players to revive on the spot without any punishment. That is something that only appears in the territory of the elves. The one below is actually a dragon turtle. It is not because it has dragon blood in its blood, but because it can have a size and strength comparable to that of a dragon when it grows up. It is also extremely rare and is the overlord of the ocean. Both monsters are hero level. In a farther place, you can even see rare epic herbs and epic minerals. The two then stepped into the Dawn Shelter. Because the powerful defense facilities are not afraid of any form of attack, there are only a few archmages who have just turned 3 guarding the door. It can be seen that the Dawn shelter is relatively short of manpower. There are more alchemical creatures above level 70. The strongest can even be comparable to Titans. The strength of about level 120 is somewhat similar to the giant god soldiers of the dwarves. It's a pity that I can't see it here for the time being. I wonder what the two of you want. The one in charge of the guard was a level 90 mage, staring at the two nervously. Even though he was the top existence among mortals, he still couldn't resist the pressure from the opposite side. But the other party's expression did not change at all. That kind of power seemed to be integrated with the surrounding environment. The mage on the opposite side was speculating, fearing that it was an enemy. While he was worried, Fule looked around and tried to control the magic guards around her with her mental power. To her surprise, the magic guards could accept her command, which further proved that the mage tower was related to Teredin. "Let them in, Il," a deep voice sounded, and Shen Xian laughed all of a sudden. It was this familiar voice, exactly the same as when he met Phillips a few months ago. The two walked in and followed the teleportation array of the elemental gate to the elemental hall. Phillips's level was not much different from the past, and was even lower than Shen Xian, but it should be noted that he was probably the first person Shen Xian encountered who was wearing an epic suit. It was not so easy to defeat him. The difference between the attributes of rare level suits and epic level suits is almost 1:2, not counting the skills attached to epic level suits. Whether it is control type, range type, or ultimate type suits, they all have an immeasurable effect. The elemental gate is indeed rich and powerful. I don't know when Dusk City can do it. Shen Xian thought to himself that he had taken away about 5 epic level and 50 rare level equipment from the other plane, which could equip 4 or 5 members and make their strength reach a relatively high level. In the past, it was the era of rare level suits. Once the average level of players reached level 30, a large number of rare level equipment options would appear, and the critical point of epic level suits was level 60. After level 60, the number of epic level equipment began to increase gradually. Therefore, in recent months, there were only a few hundred pieces of epic level equipment in the world, which suddenly exceeded 1,000 pieces, but there was still no breakthrough growth in legendary level suits. "Long time no see," Phillips. Frey teleported to Phillips and looked at him. "You haven't changed either, Wendy." Phillips saw Frey's true body at a glance and said in the same way while floating in the air. "You are doing well now, the largest wizard tower in the kingdom of Cook. What are your plans for the future?" The two have known each other for thousands of years. They asked each other and completely ignored Shen Xian's existence. "Let's develop slowly here. Religion and magic are not very prosperous in this plane. I want to spread Teredin's things and do something. It will take about a few hundred years. So that's how it is. I am also doing well in the fire element plane." Frey said, her voice lowered. "Teredin, this word will eventually be lost in history." However, Frey did not forget to ask for benefits from Phillips. If Dusk City prospers, her fire element plane will prosper. How can she not contribute? It takes tens of millions of gold to set up a teleportation array, but for Phillips, it really doesn't matter. "You want me to set up a teleportation array," Phillips said in surprise, "with nearly 1,000,000 magic crystals and the cooperation of more than a dozen great wizards, do you think the elemental gate is still the same as before?" He felt very painful, but was finally defeated by Frey. After a long time, he said helplessly, "I will solve the problem of the teleportation array, but you have to give me some time. Perhaps the material strength of the Dawn shelter is sufficient, but the number of great wizards is obviously not enough to support the construction of the teleportation array." After speaking, Phillips nodded. "Wendy, you can take these books with you. I collected them, and you can bring some necessary materials from the fire elemental plane later. 4 technical books, 3 rare ones, namely raising techniques, mammoth taming book, and combined riding, and one epic mutation research. Raising techniques can reduce the resource consumption required for raising. For example, the hundreds of crystal dragons in the territory not only consume normal food but also consume a lot of magic crystals. Mammoths are a kind of magic beast that haunts the cold northern regions. They are more than tens of meters in size and are simply the ultimate land army. The effect of combined riding is that some large magic beasts can be ridden by multiple people to work together, and someone is dedicated to driving, which can improve attack power, defense power, and movement speed. Mutation research is quite special. Each magic beast usually has several fixed number of spells per day, but mutation research can change the original attributes of the magic beast, produce unknown results, and can be passed on to the next generation. Although Phillips gave the book to Wendy, it is actually no different from giving it to Shen Xian. Are there other creatures in the fire element plane? Basically, it can be said that there are none. The fire elemental plane is an extremely simple world, located in the most primitive stage of the world, while the prime material plane was created after countless simple laws were superimposed, giving birth to countless creatures. Only in the prime material plane is it feasible to research technology. Online game DungeonMaster. Author, Bulletin Lao Bulletin Si Bulletin Me. Chapter 298. The two seemed to be talking endlessly, and thought of another thing. When do you think the remaining 2 elemental gates can be opened? There are 4 elemental gates in total, symbolizing the 4 elements of earth, water, fire, and air that make up all things. Each gate controlled a world equivalent to a medium-sized kingdom in Teredan's era, so it can reach the peak of the 6th stage of the Mage Tower. The administrator in charge of Earth was Elias, one of the Earth gods of the Earth God cult, with a demigod level 150 strength. The administrator in charge of Air is Gonia, the storm monarch of the air elemental plane, also with a strength of 150. They may be sealed and their levels will drop, but it is undeniable that they really want to liberate them as they once knew each other. Even if there are conflicts between them, big or small, at least they will not sit idly by. Of course, there were other wizard towers in Teredan. In the most glorious era, there were as many as 50. However, due to the long history, more than half of them can never be found, and some have been destroyed or excavated long ago, so they can only excavate the 4 elemental gates. Liberation. Phillips was slightly surprised when he heard it. Seeing Frey's resolute look, he sighed, I remember that I once investigated the approximate location of the remaining 2, I don't object, but we have to ensure that the matter will not be discovered, and we have to solve the problem of their placement. Transfer them to another plane? The problem is who knows the damage of the elemental gate. If the foundation supporting the operation of the wizard tower is completely damaged, they have to find another way. They are from the Teredan era and understand how the wizards in the main material plane are eager for the knowledge of that era, and even use any means. Therefore, they are unwilling to spread the knowledge at will and would rather come to another plane. It's just, will Elias return to the Earth God cult? Will that woman Gonia also take back what belongs to her? Phillips continued to think in a low voice. Wendy and Gonia are both octogenarians of the ancient elemental race, only one step away from the elemental god Arizion. The cooperation with Teredan was actually friendly and consensual, but now mages often want to take powerful intelligent elemental creatures for themselves, so the two want to establish a force that can protect themselves. They were the supreme existence of a plane at the beginning, but now they only manage a small place, which naturally makes them unwilling and want to get the power that matches their status. The two hesitated a little, but they really wanted to complete this matter in their hearts. They still remember the approximate location of the remaining 2 mage towers. With Dusk City as the center, Gonia's is 350 kilometers southeast, roughly underground at the junction of the Phoenix Council and the Pharaoh Empire, and Arius's is 510 kilometers southwest, roughly in the hinterland of the Taxili area of the Pharaoh Empire. Two distant locations. Anyway, it's not a bad idea to try to find it. After all, they now have the power to protect themselves. They cast their sights on Shenxian and finally decided to give the glorious task to Shenxian. The first step of the task is to find two magic towers according to clues. Finding one will give 18 million experience points. The second step of the task is to liberate the manager trapped in the elemental gate. If the result is good, 35 million experience points will be rewarded. If you just rescue the manager, 25 million experience points will be rewarded. The above is about experience points, and there are also contributions, reputation, and other parts. 35 million experience points. The experience is equivalent to 1/3 of Shenxian's current upgrade experience. How can he not accept such a task? Besides, it is not a time-limited task. Maybe he can complete it one day? The two monsters in front of him are thousands of years old. They don't care about the difference of a few years. After finding Phillips, Dusk City has made a breakthrough in the other plane. The teleportation array has been settled. A large number of items can be transported by the teleportation array. However, in other aspects, such as missionary work and business, there are still many things to do. A few hours later, the two returned to Dusk City, and Shenxian took the detailed map of the other plane clearly marks dozens of countries in the world. The most important thing is the sphere of influence of several major religions, which Shenxian can avoid danger. In the other plane, the religions of several countries are relatively prosperous, and all the residents are believers. There are also some dispute areas. The competition among several major religions has caused constant disasters in the local area, and the satisfaction is low. It is difficult to preach and it will waste a lot of energy. Shenxian stared at the Principality of Larn and the Kingdom of Cook. These two countries are where he currently has a foundation. There is Rast in the Principality of Larn. He is a dispensable existence. If there is no Phillips, preaching is certainly suitable for the Principality of Larn. A small country always receives less attention. If some special things happen, they will not be solved immediately, giving them buffer time. But there is an elemental gate. He has to consider whether he can get greater benefits by relying on the prosperous trade in Calais when the teleportation array is in Calais. Shenxian thought about it and found that even if he got the benefits, he could not take them away. At most, he could take away part of them. The best solution is to use the benefits he got to develop the church. However, if he was besieged by other religions, his power in the local area would be uprooted. He needs to find a reliable and capable person. He is not sure whether Rast has this ability and whether he will ruin his business. Anthony is not suitable either. His significance is mainly to provide experience points, not to run around like a priest. Besides, developing Anthony will affect Phillips's interests and convert many famous mages into fallen ones. At present, Phillips and Dusk City still have transactions, so Anthony is not a suitable choice. Shenxian thought about it again and again. Fulay gave him 4 books and then went to run her black market. The original site of the black market was in the old town. Now it needs to expand to the new town in the hope of merging at some point in the future. Otherwise, if the black market is in a backward area, its popularity will decline. Therefore, the matter of moving the main territory is not as easy as simply changing a number. 2 more updates completed. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online game DungeonMaster. Author, Buledin Lau Buledin Si Buledin Me. Chapter 299. During the few days that Shenxian stayed in the alien plane, the development of Twilight City did not fall behind. Players who believe that their territory will be improved through missionary work actively recruit suitable civilians from their territory, and are trained by the handsome pig-riding boy who is responsible for missionary work at Kangdu Studio, and serve as a security guard in the parish of Weis Wetland. The duty of rescuing the weak. In this aspect, it is more convenient for players. NPCs will inevitably bring with them the humble thoughts of noble cavemen. However, the cost for players is high, so in the end, the method adopted is to use NPCs. They selected some NPCs with relatively mild personalities and no obvious racial discrimination. About a few hundred people gathered together to carry out brainwashing education. The girl riding the pig to watch the handsome guy was the girl next to Li Mingfu. She graduated from the humanities major and knew how to make the best of the situation. People's ideas. As for whether the Sunset God sect should do such a good deed, there is a lot of controversy among the players. The Sunset cult is essentially a cult that exists to control surrounding areas. A cult should teach its followers to wage war, but the church's current actions are obviously contrary to its nature. The controversy continues, and of course the practical players prefer to use the results to convince people, proving that supporting cavemen is more beneficial to them than enslaving cavemen. Twilight City, Mercenary Union. Several players in charge of business in Kangdu Studio were recovering from injuries. They sat on benches, put their weapons and armor aside, tore apart their bloody clothes, and exposed their scarred bodies to the air. Several players with more than half health held their swords and practiced their skills on the dummies made of wooden stakes. Standing not far from them, Patatagarden and Shenxian leaned against the wall, watching them from a distance. Boiling is over. I heard that you still have the latest internal version of forbidden fruit. Should you pass it on to me? Patatagarden smiled happily, not at all as steady as a middle-aged man. Later, when I'm free. Shenxian replied, taking a look at Patatagarden's motionless expression. He could only sigh, and then asked, I heard that the Kangdu mercenary group has now reached a D-level mercenary group. Yes, it took a month to go from E-level to D-level, which is quite fast considering the dozens of people. After completing several C-level missions, the Kangdu mercenary group has a pretty good reputation. In this case, we can give them a suitable place. After all, the training direction of studio members is business. I believe that after a few weeks of running in, they can get along well with each other and can put it into practice. That's what I said, but you two leaders are not very responsible. You haven't even seen the members below a few times. From now on, game studios are just a part of the online game industry after all. Patatagarden, you don't seem to care about them much. Hee hee. Patatagarden didn't blush at all. Of course young people need training. If this kind of industry that requires passion for work can't withstand even a small setback, students who graduated from prestigious universities will be too worthless. Shenxian listened and smiled calmly. Let's take a look at the map. My plan is that the studio needs to own a town-level territory, about 30 UN, but there is no place for them in the current Twilight City. They need to fight for it themselves. Towns, the number of troops can be larger, roughly around 1,000, and the elite system can be implemented. Taxes can be lowered for early and rapid development. Do you think there are some suitable locations on the map? The cave area near the Fran Valley in the south and the wild cattle habitat in the Weis wetland in the east are both good choices. The development of both areas is very difficult, but they are both suitable areas for establishing towns. The purpose of the town is mainly to run a studio. If you choose the former, it will mainly focus on completing tasks issued by players, while the latter will focus on making money. It is relatively more suitable for players who like to operate. Shenxian stared at the two places and thought for a moment. I don't object. There aren't many people targeted in both places, but it would be best if they could be combined with the territory's next strategic goal. I'd better have them in Weis wetland to develop. You can collaborate with territorial players. Leave it to them to choose. Patatagarden said after listening to Shenxian's words. Speaking of which, News from several media such American Samoa 17174 and Zintayo will be online soon. We need to give them some encouragement, otherwise there will be no motivation. Promote, Shen Xian asked doubtfully. I believe they have more experience. Promoting it will help increase revenue. What are the requirements you set for them? A town, 4 villages, and 30 camps were built within a month, with a population of more than 30,000. One of the help provided by Twilight City is technical support, which allows towns to master technologies one level lower than the highest level in the territory. This is quite a preferential treatment. Most players in the control area can only have technologies 2 levels lower than the highest level, and some key technologies are not yet public. The other is in terms of funds. 1.5 million gold will be gradually injected into the construction of camps in towns and surrounding villages, of which 500,000 gold will be used to exchange for various necessary resources, such as stone, wood, and grain, which will be transported directly by ground dragons, eliminating the need for mining troubles and speeding up construction progress. However, even with the support of Dusk Town, Shen Xian felt that it was still uncertain whether the goal proposed by Patata Garden could be achieved. The habitat of the wild bulls in the east of Wei's wetland is a place with relatively few cavemen, and the surrounding areas are rich in food, wood, and stone. This is obvious. However, it takes a long time to tame the surrounding wild bulls so that they do not feel dangerous and do not endanger the development of the territory. It requires the druid players in the studio to put in a lot of effort. Once they can live in harmony with the surrounding magic beasts, I believe it will not be so easy to break through a town that is mainly based on defense. Of course, Shen Xian will not interfere with the studio's plan. After all, it is not within his management scope. As long as it does not affect the overall situation, he will not say anything. Wei's wetland. This sunken basin is surrounded by mountains dozens of meters high on all sides, and the high dome connected to the second underground floor gives it a unique defensive advantage. At this time, the resources piled up like a hill were delivered one after another by the ground dragons. This was a long journey. The road in the Wei's wetland was not easy to walk on. The ground dragons with basically no combat power could be taken away by powerful monsters at any time. Of course, the current manpower of Dusk City was strong enough and there was no shortage of escort troops. The prototype of the town has taken shape and has the conditions to upgrade the assembly center. After investigation, the surrounding areas are basically safe, there are no large dark passages, and it is far away from the underground maze defense zone of Dusk City. Therefore, only a few illusion barriers were arranged. In a few days, thousands of immigrants supported by hundreds of players in Dusk Hills will arrive one after another, and the town population will be full in a short time. Players supporting the construction of the town is not without rewards. In the future part of the increase in grain production, the above players will get a corresponding share. A secret trail with patrols patrolling day and night was quietly built, using druids to open the way, lead away the surrounding monsters, and secretly encircle and suppress them. There are too many things involved. This is also the reason why the Wei's wetland has not been occupied by foreign races for so many years. The first is that the monsters are densely populated and difficult to be completely eradicated. A large number of troops need to be stationed for a long time. Fortunately, Dusk City only builds a town here. The second is that the climate is humid, and it is difficult to build a grand city. Ordinary rocks often take less than a few days, and special structures are too expensive to be popularized. Therefore, it is difficult to see a large city with a population of more than 100,000 in the wetland swamp area. Riding a pig to watch the handsome guy wipe the sweat from his forehead, looked at the busy scene of a group of inferior demons and cavemen working together below, and breathed a sigh of relief. I don't know how long this kind of life will last, men farming and women weaving? She thought to herself. After a while, dozens of players who came from Dusk City arrived here, settled down one after another, and chose their own mansions. Each mansion is their home in the virtual world, where they can do whatever they want. The realm that has passed the identity verification will not prohibit some things. Of course, because of the terrain, the health value of the building is generally 20% less than that built in Dusk Hills, and the appearance is also ugly and unacceptable. However, this is their place after all, and their career will start from here. After completing several mercenary missions in the previous month, each member received an average of several thousand yuan in remuneration. Compared with the salary of this era, it can only be said to be enough to make ends meet, but they are working in Kangdu Studio after all. Although it may not develop into a super studio under the Cleveland Consortium with hundreds of millions of net profits every year, it is good to have Kangdu Bank as a backer. Li Mingfu once reviewed the diplomatic situation of Dusk City and has maintained good cooperative relations with dozens of major forces around it. Rome was not built in a day, and the network of personal connections was not acquired in a day. If you want to make friends with so many forces, you must first have a wrist that can reach the sky. It is conceivable that a studio that focuses on business can develop under such conditions. Li Mingfu believes that even if the head of the studio does not have strong confidence in them, they can still do something. He and his members spent several consecutive days staying up late to plan the layout of the Wei's wetland, and made certain estimates for development, economy, and military, with the purpose of proving their value. Unfortunately, the Wei's wetland is not a place suitable for players without any foundation to develop. Just when they were ambitious and wanted to put it into practice, a sudden report suddenly appeared in front of them. Dark elves invade. The prestige of the Sunset God cult has declined. Everyone, tell me, what should we do? I'm so busy, only one chapter today. Online game Dungeon Master. Author, Bulletin Lao Bulletin Si Bulletin Me. Chapter 300. In fact, when the Dark Elves were frequently active in the Wei's wetland, Twilight City had already foreseen and learned the information. The underground world became more dangerous and barren as you went to the bottom. The Dark Elves had been peeping at such a natural food base for a long time and would never tolerating the occupation by other forces. Even if Twilight City adopts the attitude of hiding whenever possible, it cannot always hide it. Look at the report. Shen Xian took out a few pieces of information compiled by intelligence personnel and handed them to Miss Xiao to read. In recent days, Dark Elves have been active frequently, and a large part of them are players. When the player's status in Blood Moon City increases, the player they also try to gain a higher status, and the best way is to kill and conquer, which is directly reflected in this action. After reading it, Miss Xiao put the information on the table, her expression no longer showing worry. I didn't expect that the Dark Elves would reach out to us again. However, Twilight City is no longer the Twilight City of the past. With nearly 30,000 regular troops and 5,000 new recruits, we are fully capable of protecting ourselves. You mean to hit? Shen Xian looked at Miss Xiao's pretty face and couldn't help but ask. Yes, Miss Xiao said without hesitation, having no doubt that Shen Xian had the same idea as her. The fact is, just as she thought, Shen Xian has been gearing up to teach the Dark Elves a lesson, but it was not possible in the past. It is only now that Twilight City has such an ability for the first time. Tu Jukan was called in. The Dark Elves have been active recently and have posed a major threat to our development in Wei's wetland. We decided to use the Bloody Cross as a vanguard to control the situation in Wei's wetland and protect the development of the town. Bloodstained Cross is a team composed of pure players. Which player in the former Desert Frontier League was not a master in PK? Facing such a purely technical competition with few strategic battles, the players showed great enthusiasm. Ant Bing. Miss Xiao called Ant Bing, who was a Frost Whisper Ranger. I'll leave the intelligence work on the second underground floor to you. If the situation is right, I'm afraid you will have to take action. Miss Xiao is referring to assassination. Ant Bing's identity in reality is that of a killer in the past. Her superb killing art cannot be denied in online games either. In addition, Ant Bing's equipment is a mix of rare and epic levels. Excluding the players and NPCs who have been assigned tasks, only the New York soldiers of the Ogre House are comparable and moved under the command of Shen Xian. The two finished arranging the preliminary work, and ordered Potato to inform the studio players below not to worry. Then they called Mist Aaron from the hand of Ursuline to inquire about the training progress of the new army. After the last military expansion, the number of regular troops in Dusk City was around 28,000, but it was nothing compared to the city's rapidly growing population. The food supply maintained a steady growth. This was due to the fact that the territory spent a lot of effort cultivating caveman believers and developing the Sunset Cult. Related. The ratio of residents to troops in the underground world has always been relatively high, usually around 10:1. Unlike the human kingdom on the surface, dozens of civilians often support one soldier. The new batch of troops is mainly for the construction of garrison in Wei's wetland. The main structure is Black Wizard, equipped with succubus and enhanced demon summoning equipment to adapt to the battle in the wetland. The cross swordsman can also appear in wet areas, but it consumes a lot of equipment durability. No equipment in the kingdom can be repaired infinitely, and even artifacts will be completely destroyed one day. As the scope of activities in Twilight City increases, differences begin to appear in the combination and adaptation of the troops. There are 5,000 soldiers with an average level of 35 and equipped with level 30 suits. Their combat effectiveness is not much different from that of the regular army of Peak Fortress. Even ordinary dark wizards will have more than 5,000 health points and have powerful control and attack capabilities. Succubi, on the other hand, have a strong sense of their surroundings and can easily detect invisible units. They have an advantage in fighting dark elves who are good at sneak attacks. It can be said that they are specially prepared for the war on the third underground floor. A dark wizard specializes in succubus summoning. The succubi they summon will receive multiple bonuses such as attributes and skills. They will master the unique talents of succubi, and their ability to adapt to the battlefield will be reduced in exchange for pertinence. Of suppressive power. Currently, 1,200 soldiers can participate in the establishment, and it is expected that 5,000 soldiers will be trained within 3 months. The current number of troops that can be deployed in Dusk City is about 22,000, which is an increase of more than 50% compared to the last time at the end of the North Split. The only thing that remains unchanged is that the number of elite troops remains roughly unchanged, and their level has not improved much compared to the last time. It's just that Shen Xian's purpose is not to capture Blood Moon City, but to give this main city of Dark Elves a warning to make them realize their strength. Although the main city of the Dark Elves is powerful, much more powerful than the deserted city, the social system of the Dark Elves makes them unwilling to bow their heads and pray for help from their fellow tribesmen even if they are completely destroyed. They only need to teach a family planning and operation around Dusk Hills. Let's talk about the general strength of Blood Moon City. It has a population of more than 400,000 and an average level of 25. The Dark Elves that can be considered as the army account for 1/5. There are more than a dozen families in Blood Moon City, and the weakest one has the same number as the regular army of Twilight City. Combat effectiveness. On the surface, the war between Twilight City and Blood Moon City is a bit troublesome, but it also has allies, such as Zushan, Cry, etc., who are very dissatisfied with the long-term harassment of the Dark Elves. The reason why the Peak Fortress and the Fallen Temple will not be threatened is because of them the Dark Elves cannot afford to be offended by their strength. When Dusk City first appeared, most of the players in the surrounding areas who were unaware of it were shocked. When Dusk City intended to develop the second underground floor, players began to pay attention. Of course, it is not possible to develop it all at once. Who knows if they can do it? Let Dusk City do the experiment first. The first one to eat crabs will always get the advantage, but it does not mean that the second and third ones will have nothing. Because they showed interest in development, they agreed with the deterrent action of the Dark Elves this time and were willing to send troops to ensure that the surrounding areas would never be visited by the Dark Elves again. Once they fight with the Dark Elves, the vengeful Dark Elves will definitely do whatever it takes. Maybe many players will be unlucky. For Dusk City, these negative effects will be relatively small. After forming a unified opinion within Dusk City, Shen Xian continued to head towards the desolate city.